evening, everyone. Welcome to this Monday edition of No Credentials Required, where you don't need to talk. We don't need a press pass to talk sports. We're presented by Belly Up Sports in association with Godzilla Media. I'm Ryan McCarthy, one of your hosts. To my right is a man who now has tinsels instead of tonsils. Dustin Henry. Dustin, how are we doing today?
Doing all right. Doing all right. Hope you're doing well, and hope you had a Merry Christmas. And to quote the great Chris Berman once again, let us be the last to wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Yeah, I mean, it's 12 days of Christmas, so I mean, this is technically day two. I think this is
Yeah,
two. Get your
still.
two turtle doves, and yesterday was a partridge in a pear tree, and tomorrow is three French hens. So I haven't done the addition or the multiplication on this, but I gotta figure out how many gifts there are at the end. Like, because you literally have 12 partridges, 24 turtle
Oh,
doves,
turtle doves. Yeah, yeah.
36 French hens. It's astounding, astounding. But we're gonna get to everything in just a moment. We're gonna talk about the week in the NFL so far. We have a game tonight. We'll try to get you out of here before 8:15. But before we do that, we just want to remind you about our social channels right down below: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at NoCredsREQ, Facebook.com/NoCredsREQ, and YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube right now, smash that like button, hit the notification bell, and you'll be informed. It's youtube.com/ at NoCredsREQ. So if you're watching right now, again, smash that like button, hit the notification bell, because that way you know when we are live or if we post another video. On the podcast side, subscribe. Spreaker is currently our home base, uh, but we have some things working out with Belly Up right now as to when we might move to another platform in the new year. But right now, you can find us on Spreaker. That's our home base, but you also find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, basically whatever platform you listen to. And also rate and review. If you leave a review, and again, 5-star rating, 5 stars is always helpful because that way more people know about this podcast. If you leave a review, I might even read it on the air. So we're going to get going. Start off in week 16 of the NFL, a big week again, lots of playoff implications. We'll kind of review that at the end, but we want to start off with our biggest upset of week 16. And Dustin, I want to hand it over to you first. So you have the honors of taking it away and letting us know, let the audience know what you thought the biggest upset of this week was.
Well, I saw a very limited football this week, and I was in the midst of holiday celebrations, as I'm sure a lot of us were, and playing board games and watching Christmas movies and doing a lot of other things besides watching football. But I did catch some glimpses, and the biggest upset that surprised me, just based on how the two seasons have gone, was the Packers beating the Miami Dolphins.
Mm.
I really, upon watching some of the rundowns and highlights of this game, I felt that the Dolphins really kind of gave this one away to the Packers. Tua throws three interceptions. I believe it was Raheem Mostert has a costly fumble. There was a couple. The Packers special teams set them up with great field position a couple of times on some returns. The Packers didn't look really all that crisp, and Aaron Rodgers, he looked okay, but he didn't look unbelievable. The Packers running game, from what I saw, really didn't get going all that well. The AJ Dillon nor Aaron Jones really got it going. And yet, still, the Packers come away with the victory, in my opinion, largely due to those Dolphins turnovers. I think the Dolphins really gave this one away, but still, the Packers have a win, and they are technically still alive, I think, for the playoffs by a slim margin.
I have
So,
very slim margin at this point, but yeah, I mean those three turnovers that Tua Tagovailoa threw, the three interceptions were on three consecutive possessions. So those turned the game. That turned the game around because the
yes.
first interception gave Green Bay the lead. It was 2020, and it's all tied up, and they wound up taking the lead. Tua throws another interception, and that gives them another cushion. And lastly, the last interception, game over.
Yeah.
Game over. So yeah, you could blame Tua Tagovailoa for those giving the Packers the game, but at the same time, you can't just rely on big plays for the entire season.
No.
Yes, the big plays are huge in terms of it gives somebody fantasy points. Great, big deal. But if you get at Tua enough, you get in his face enough, he's going to make some big mistakes. And we'll also, I guess there was some big news that came over the wire about an hour ago.
Mm-hmm.
Tua's in concussion protocol again.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah. Which I have a feeling both of us will dive into at the end of the show. But yeah, you have to wonder if he maybe wasn't, because I think they showed the hit that they think caused him to enter the protocol, and you have to wonder if that was partially the cause of some of those turnovers, but you'll never know.
Possibly. Yeah, possibly. Yeah, you never know. So yeah, that's Dustin's biggest upset. My biggest upset, and I think pretty much the entire nation had this as the biggest upset in their minds. The Houston Texans, your Houston Texans, beating the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee on Christmas Eve. And that is a huge blow. You got a one-win team being a team who is flailing right now. Their division lead is like they're now in second place in the AFC South. And Dustin, my prediction of the Jacksonville Jaguars overtaking the Tennessee Titans for the AFC division crown, it appears to be coming true.
Yeah, you're mad. I'm telling you, I'm not going to mess with you. If this works out, I'm going to be afraid of whatever you predict. These powers that you have.
Are you kidding me? I'm afraid of what I predict.
But I will say though, I had to see, because I saw this upset come across the wire, and I had a feeling you were going to talk about it. But I have to disagree because of what you just said. The Titans are on the ropes. They're kind of flailing. Tannehill's hurt. It was looking like he was gonna miss the season, so they were looking at starting Willis. And Derrick Henry is the Titans' offense. Everyone knows this. And the reason why I didn't think it was that big of an upset, even though it is a big upset, but why I thought the Packers over the Dolphins was bigger, is because the Texans have been playing very well over the last, I'd say, 3 weeks. They took the Cowboys to the wire. They played well against, I'm trying to remember. Oh, it was the Chiefs. They almost knocked the Chiefs off. They gave the Chiefs all that they could handle. So to me, them finally getting over the hump against this Titans team wasn't the big surprise that in my opinion, that I think everyone thinks.
I mean, the reason why I had it as the biggest upset is because the way that they did it. The funny thing is about this Texans team, they're actually 2-1-1 in the division, and they're 2-7-1 in the conference. But oh my gosh, this was just an amazing. It wasn't amazing, but it was just the turn of events that it took, because the Titans went up early. Derrick Henry had a big run, and Rex Burkhead recovers a fumble in the end zone, tying the score. Then Houston takes the lead. Malik Willis has a 14-yard run. Tennessee takes the lead. Texans get within 1 with another field goal by Kaimi Fairbairn. And then Brandon Cooks, the ill-used Brandon Cooks, catches a 6-yard touchdown pass with 2:52 to go in the game. And to me, it might be an upset, because the Texans are going to get the number 1 pick overall this year, for sure. Unless they win the next 2 games, but I don't see that happening, because they play the Jaguars, and then they play, I believe, the Colts. Yep. Yeah, it's funny that the schedule bookends with the Colts. They host the Colts in week 1. They're at the Colts in week 17 or week 18. So I mean, Houston's going to get them number one overall pick. It's just the worst, one of the worst teams probably the worst team in the NFL this year. Although Jared said it a couple weeks ago on our program for our 100th episode, he said the Texans are a lot better than what a lot of people think, and I had to agree with that. And agree with it based on the result of this game.
Mm-hmm.
The Titans had, other than Derrick Henry left, Derrick Henry right, Derrick Henry up the middle, Derrick Henry catching a pass out of the backfield. They have no other offensive weapons.
Yeah.
I guess Treylon Burks is done for the year, if I'm not mistaken. So,
oh, jeez.
So yeah, this I kind of saw this after the Jaguars beat up the Titans. I kind of saw this trend coming. I consider this the biggest upset in my mind because it's just because of the way that the division is. Yeah, we said a couple weeks ago who wants to win the AFC South. Well, we're going to find out pretty soon. And
Yeah.
actually,
Somebody's going to do it.
I am mistaken. Treylon Burks is not out for the season, but he did not play in this game. So if you're the Titans, you're looking at they just fired their GM a couple weeks ago too. After that, actually, it's after the Jaguars game, they fired their GM. So I think if you're the Titans, got a lot of work cut out for you in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts with that loss against Jacksonville, which probably sunk your season. And this one just makes you sink further. You gotta win out. You gotta win out the rest of your schedule, and hope that Jacksonville messes up somehow, or you knock off Jacksonville in the final game of the season to win that division.
It could come down to the wire, as you predicted. We'll have to see.
Yep. And the Texans are now a game behind Jacksonville. I think if Jacksonville wins and Tennessee loses next week, I think the Jaguars do wrap up the division, because it would be too far of a hill to climb for Tennessee. So if I go to this, look at the standings, Jacksonville, they're both 7-8, but right now the Jaguars own the tiebreaker. So it would have to be a win out situation for both teams, and they meet in the final game of the season in Jacksonville. And it kind of makes me wonder if that's going to be flexed on Sunday night football. Might be.
Could be.
But if the Jets and the Dolphins, the Jets win next week and the Dolphins lose last week, then that might be the game that will see whoever goes to the playoffs. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting 2 weeks remaining in the season.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings us to our next category, as always, its biggest disappointment, and Zach Wilson. Have a seat, my friend.
It's for both of us. So let me just get my little section out of the way, because I have a feeling that you're going to have a lot more to say. But wow, I didn't expect it to be as bad as it was, and it speaks volumes that a quarterback that was just signed from the practice squad, Chris Streveler, I believe, was able to come in and immediately lead the Jets on their longest drive into Jacksonville territory. But with that, I leave it to you.
Okay, so I don't know how this team doesn't move the ball with Zach Wilson in the backfield. I don't see how it happens. I don't know why it happens. They had their chance to win last week against the Lions. They had a really good chance to end their home season with a big win in miserable weather. The diehards came out and saw this game, and right to halftime, they're booing him off the field. And Robert Saleh, I'm surprised he didn't get yanked earlier, because it wasn't until the first drive of the third quarter when he said, "Yep, Zach, your night's done. Your night's done." And they bring in a former CFL quarterback, and I'm not knocking the CFL. Love the CFL, plenty of talent up there. But it takes a former CFL quarterback to start moving the ball down the field. And they had a chance to get within I think maybe 2 scores on that drive, on his first drive, and they couldn't. Unfortunately, they couldn't get that. They lost on 4th down, and Jacksonville got the ball back, and it was just basically that was game over. But how come every other quarterback on this team in the quarterback's room can grasp this offense, but Zach Wilson can't? Take all those sacks, you get unprotected by our offensive line. The offensive line has something to do with it. That's for sure. But I don't understand how he's not grasping the offense. And they said after the game that you could tell Zach lost his confidence. He looked like he was done. He's like, he didn't want to be out there. And I'm glad they yanked him because I think he would have gotten hurt if he stayed out there too much longer.
Yeah.
I think he's still playing hurt, which is part of the reason why he's having all this trouble. But you were drafted second over. I mean, we talked about this last week. You were drafted second overall in the NFL draft in 2021 for a reason. Now, I don't know if it's I don't know which scout said we got to check this kid out. He's super accurate. He's got arm strength. He's this and that, and he can run with the ball. I don't know which scout got fooled in thinking that this guy could play at this level. Personally, I think he should have stayed an extra season at BYU, let his game develop, because that was his first. Because 2020 was his only year he started. He started all 12, 13 games for BYU. Part of the problem is, I talked about this on Snowman in the Morning this morning. Shout out to Snowman. I know he's watching right now. Part of the problem is with these athletes is that they get it in their heads from a parent, a friend, an advisor, a coach, somebody who wants to try to make a name off their success, and they overinflate their egos, and they overinflate statistics. They have a great pro day, and they get to the NFL, and all of a sudden, or this is for any level, like any sport, and NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, and all of a sudden, like they get to the big leagues, and they're deer in the headlights. So I don't know if this is the same way for Zach Wilson or not. There's a lot of factors that go into this. The Jets offensive coaches are not setting him up for success. They're letting him do too much. And I think when you let a quarterback that young do too much, I mean, look at Mark Sanchez. Look at his first 2 years as a New York Jet. When he was drafted, the Jets traded up to get him. His first 2 seasons, he was successful because he had a running game. Rex Ryan believed in the running game. He believed the running game would set up Mark Sanchez for success. And it did. For the first 2 seasons, it did. And then when Rex Ryan basically handed the keys to Sanchez to try to do amazing things on offense, he obviously floundered. Look what happened after that. So the grumblings are, Jake Lizer said it on Saturday morning before the game started that it was reported that the Jets are probably going to move on from Zach Wilson, which is a shame. It's a shame, but in a way, I think you have to cut ties eventually. I don't know if they're going to bring in an established starter and let him sit for a season, like a Jimmy G or Gardner Minshew. Don't bother with Lamar Jackson. He's going to be franchise tagged, and you're going to have to probably give a first 1 or 2 first round picks to get him. And Lord knows where the Jets are going to be in that draft order for next year. Right now, I think they're 15th right now. They could climb, if they lose the next 2 games, I think they could climb up as high as 10. So we're back in the top 10 of the draft again. So again, it's my biggest disappointment. And again, it's not just on Zach Wilson alone, but but at the same time, you're the quarterback. You have to take the most responsibility. But there's a myriad of other factors, naming your offensive line being a dog's breakfast. Mike LaFleur not giving you, not setting you up for success, and having the run game basically come to a screeching halt for 2 straight weeks. When you had success running the ball against the Bills and Chicago and pretty much any other team not named the New England Patriots. So, it's sad. It's sad that it's gonna have to come to this. I have a feeling they're probably gonna go shopping in the off season. But man,
and
could have been.
The thing is, you are a much more educated Jets fan, and I would argue overall your football IQ is higher than mine. But the one thing that I took away from this game as I was sitting there watching it the contrast between Zach Wilson on the field and Trevor Lawrence on the field, the number 1 and 2 picks, respectively, in their drafts. Trevor Lawrence, he's starting to figure it out.
Yeah.
He's really, and we all,
I think Doug Peterson's a big reason why he's starting to figure it out.
yes, he's starting to, and you could tell in that game, he realized. I mean, Jacksonville threw it when they had to, but they didn't throw it much. Trevor
No,
Lawrence, he started figuring. You could almost see the switch go off, and I don't know if this was coaching. I don't know if it was something Trevor decided himself. He said, "These conditions suck. I can move. Let me run the ball a bit." And boy, did he. He was getting some chunk yards, and it just, Zach Wilson, on the other hand, he did not have that kind of command. You could see it. Trevor Lawrence is starting to feel comfortable after what I argued previously on this show was probably one of the most tumultuous first seasons in the NFL that a young quarterback could have.
mm-hmm.
And Doug Peterson's steady hand, I think, and steadying influences probably has a lot to do with this. But when you're picked 1 and 2 respectively, that's indicating that in some people's mind, the gap between Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson was not a huge gap, but it couldn't have looked any bigger in this game.
Yeah, no, that definitely is an astute observation, Dustin. I mean, this is turning into Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf all over again.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean Ryan Leaf. I mean, man, that that's one of the biggest. Uh, there's a part of me that wishes that he had figured it all out in an alternate universe, because there are still people today that say Ryan Leaf was the most talented quarterback I've ever seen. He just mentally, there were signs that he
Yep.
was not ready for anything, that and by some accounts was not a great teammate even on his high school and college teams. But now Ryan Leaf has turned his life around after some
Yep.
hardships, and I think he
Mm-hmm.
does a lot of speaking engagements and things, and he finally seems to have turned it around. But man, I hope, I understand the comparison there, but I hope it doesn't turn in that
Yeah.
direction for
Yeah.
Mr. Wilson.
And part of it is also it's not just the lack of accuracy. It's not the lack of control of this offense or knowledge of this offense. Durability is a huge issue too. It was evident last year when he hurt his knee,
Yeah.
although Matt Judon rolled on it and didn't get called. Still mad about that. And there was the non contact injury he had in the preseason that caused him to go in for meniscus repair surgery, meniscus repair,
Mhm.
and would be out for the first 2 weeks of the season. So, or 3 weeks of the season. But it's just, I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping they'll do a reevaluation after the season's over. Um, but I think the best thing for the Jets to do right now is to find a team that will take him, because that will actually be a smaller. It'll actually be a smaller cap hit if they trade him rather than cut him outright.
Mhm.
But
And you know what? And for his sake, if it is time for the Jets to move on from him, I hope he does get another opportunity, because maybe a couple of years on the bench learning behind somebody, maybe we'll see what that scout was seeing, but I think you laid it out very well. He came out too early from this young point in his career. It certainly
yeah,
appears that he's overmatched.
yeah, and it's true for a lot of college athletes, whether it's again football, basketball, baseball. You
Mhm.
see a lot of guys who are told you're great, you're the best, you can make it in the next league, but they're either physically or mentally unprepared
Yes.
to go to the next level. And
Yes.
that's part of the reason why I don't watch a lot of college basketball anymore, because it's one and done for a lot of these kids who are in the bigger programs. Which is why I pay attention more to the mid majors, because kids tend to stay all 4 years unless you're an exceptional talent like John Morant was at Murray State. There's a tendency for those teams to play all 4 years together.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just kids are either again, they're either physically or mentally unprepared for the expectations and demands of the next level. So it's
Yeah, and let me say, I
too
would
bad.
be as well. I would be as well. I was not I certainly was not equipped um if I look at myself when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I was not equipped for adult responsibilities yet, and I'm not a person who was thrust into the spotlight. So,
Hmm.
you always learn as you get older, and you hopefully figure things out. I'm still trying to figure some things out, but
Yeah,
man, the pressure that is on these kids, especially like you said, in some cases from their parents or maybe somebody around them who's looking to get a piece of their shine, a piece of,
yep.
or exploit them. It's a tough thing to
If
navigate.
if you want a really good precautionary tale of this, watch the 30 for 30, the best that never was, about
Oh
Marcus Dupree.
yes, yeah,
He had very shisty pastor advise him to go to Oklahoma instead of stay home at the Southern Mississippi, and unfortunately, a lot of things just kind of, yeah, went in a tailspin afterwards, and it's a very sad story. Very
yeah.
sad story.
Yeah, because he clearly had talent. But
He
yes, I
did.
remember I watched that 30 for 30, and then the things he went through to rehabilitate himself after his injuries and everything. And it just, you have to wonder what could have been.
So I forgot to mention before we move on to our next segment. Forgot to mention, if you're watching right now, leave us a comment. If you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube,
It's
first
hard
things
to tell.
first, smash that like button either way, and then leave us a comment. We gotta play that, and we gotta play that beautiful bean footage.
Yeah.
Gotta play that music.
Let's Here we go. Here we go.
Yeah, finish with us during the show. Actually, we have a couple comments right now from right at the beginning of the hour. Kevin Wilson, Happy New Year's, guys. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Same to you.
Had a good one. And Snowman chimed in. Tua is done. The 49ers are the NFL's most dangerous team. The Pack will get eliminated next week. Snowman's takes. We appreciate that, Snowman. We appreciate you stopping by and giving us your takes. So we're gonna move on from here to our most entertaining games. Dustin, I'm gonna hand it over to you first. In your mind, from watching all these games, well, just catching up on highlights of these games,
Yeah.
for you, what was the most entertaining game of this week?
For me, I think I got to give it to Eagles Cowboys. This was and it's mostly because of the intrigue in my own mind that surrounded this game. I wanted to see, because I'll call them haters. There are people that are saying, "Oh, Jalen
Cup of,
Hurts,
a cup of haters.
yeah, Jalen Hurts, though he's not that good. It's because he has talent around him. It's because of everything." And and first of all, we saw that Jalen Hurts definitely adds another dimension to this offense. No disrespect to Gardner Minshew, I thought he handled himself well in this game. He did
Mhm.
have, I believe, 2 picks. You never want to
Yeah.
see it, but I mean, there are some Cowboys fans out there today saying, "Oh, we beat the Eagles. The Cowboys are for real." You beat the Eagles with Gardner Minshew in at quarterback, and you still didn't. It's not like you ran him off the field.
Mhm.
Gardner Minshew was able to go in there with the Eagles' weapons around them, and he was able to, score, I think, 34 points on a Cowboys defense that a lot of people were saying, "Oh, it's one of the top ones in the NFL." So to me, this speaks more about the Philadelphia Eagles and why they have the best record in the NFL, and they've shown that they're far and away, in my opinion, the best team in the NFC still. Well, wait a minute. Have to revise that. The Niners are there with them. The
Mhm.
Niners are certainly, that defense and the weapons that they have with Christian McCaffrey and everything. And as I've said in the past, I like the way Brock Purdy carries himself. But to me, the Cowboys fans that are chirping today about we beat the Eagles, I think it says more about your Cowboys squad that the Eagles were able to almost pull one out with Gardner Minshew in there at quarterback, chucking it around the yard.
Mm.
So, it's to me, that was the biggest game. It also, the stakes felt high. The NFC East has been an entertaining division this year. So I was swept up in the atmosphere, you know?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. In my mind, the most entertaining game was between the Giants and the Vikings. I was at my brother's house. We were having Christmas Eve lunch.
Oh,
I was hanging out
nice.
afterwards and sitting on their couch with a cat in my lap and and just watching some hot. He had NFL Game Day on. He didn't have Red Zone, which was kind of disappointing. But
Oh,
I
man.
got to talk to my brother about that. Like,
Oh,
Jim,
yeah.
this is not Red Zone. This is Game Day. It's commercials. We want commercial-free football. But the Giants have to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. The Vikings had to win to try to keep their hopes for the number 1 seed alive. I don't think the Vikings will get to that number 1 seed, but the Giants, I got to hand to the Giants. They hung in with the Vikings all game, and they just kept in there. They kept hanging around. They went up eventually tying the score. Got touched. Saquon Barkley had a touchdown. They got the 2-point conversion. They tied the score at 24. That's a little bit more time than they probably wanted to on the clock for Kirk Cousins to do his magic with Justin Jefferson.
Oh, man. What a beast that guy is.
And then the Vikings get the game winning field goal. I guess it was a franchise record. Greg Joseph had the game winning field goal, 61 yards to win the game, which was an exciting ending. I guess they're trying a new tradition. I guess at least for one home game in December. It's the whiteout game. They're trying a new tradition now. The whiteout game where they have all the fans wear white. Vikings wear their all white uniforms and the white end zones, which for a dome stadium they try to make it look like a snow, like they have snow on the ground, which I'm kind of glad it didn't have a retractable roof because I understand it was probably below zero in Minnesota before during the game. We had this wicked, it's cold in December.
Oh, yeah.
But Vikings stay within the Vikings stay in the hunt for the number 1 seed. They're one game back. Minnesota and San Francisco is right in their tail with the Cowboys right in their tail too. So, and it's another one of those games where it comes down to the last possession of the game, and the Vikings wind up pulling it out. So good on them. The Giants, I think they're still alive. They're the number 1. They're the number 6 seed right now, and the NFC playoff picture. They stay alive based on the Lions and unfortunately your Seattle Seahawks losing on Saturday too. So
That was not surprising.
and Washington still is in the 7th seed. So based on those 2 losses. So it's another wacky week we've come to expect in the NFL.
Yes.
Chaos.
Yes. Now, the most surprising thing about the Seahawks Chiefs game was the amount of Seahawks that were shirtless before the game. So that's about it.
Yeah,
So
and what was it 10 degrees at kickoff at Arrowhead?
yeah, something like that. Yeah, and
Like
it was supposed to get colder.
we're tough, and you lost by 2 scores.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take a quick commercial break, thanks to our friends at Invader Coffee. When we come right back, talk about our most notable performances and our hottest individual takes coming into this week after week 16. Well, most of week 16. We have a game tonight. Again, we'll get you out of here. We'll try to get everybody out of here by 8:15. So if you want to watch that game, you can go do it. I'm gonna watch Letterkenny season 11 myself. So
I think I'm gonna watch Knives Out because I haven't seen that yet, and Glass Onions out today, so I wanna catch up here.
there you go. There you go. We'll see a quick commercial break from our friends at Invader Coffee. This episode of No Credentials Required is brought to you by Invader Coffee. For the coffee lover who wants good, quality coffee with no bullshit and no filler, Invader Coffee is an ultra-premium, veteran-owned coffee company proudly delivering only the best coffee your hard-earned money can buy. They aim to only serve the highest quality, organic, air-roasted coffee beans sourced from free trade farms all over the world. They keep things simple. The best coffee at an affordable price in order to provide you with the value you deserve for your morning boost. 100% fair trade, 100% organic coffee beans, 100% air roasted, 100% money back guarantee. Visit invadercoffee.com Enter promo code BELLYUP at checkout and receive 15% off your order. That's right, folks, 15% off. And use our link in the description. We have our link in our description both on the Facebook and YouTube streams. And if you use promo code BELLYUP, you still get 15% off your order, which is really, really great. So go ahead and order from them. It helps the show, and use that promo code. Get yourself some really awesome coffee. Dustin, I have a feeling you probably enjoyed some during the Christmas holiday, I suspect.
I did. Christmas Eve morning and Christmas Day, I had cups of the Snickerdoodle flavored coffee. I really
The cookie
enjoyed that one.
crumble.
Yes, the
Yeah.
cookie crumble. That was fantastic. My sister, I will say, she next leveled it. She put hot chocolate in it too. That was
Ooh.
delicious. But
Okay.
yeah, I was loving that Snickerdoodle coffee. It was the perfect Christmas morning accompaniment.
Awesome. I'm still in the bad Santa. I'm kind of between. I got a little bit, about half the bag of each left before I have to order more. So,
Yeah, okay.
gotta get myself an order of bitter coffee. Hey, I'll use promo code. I'll
Yeah,
use
why
the
not?
and to get the 15% off, and I'll use the link to help out help out with the affiliation, help out the show. So we're gonna go to most notable performance, and I gotta say, this Carolina Panthers team has turned it around. Mostly because Matt Rule does not know how to coach in the NFL. Good luck in Nebraska, buddy.
Yeah.
I know my buddy James, who's been on the show, talking about Nebraska. He's a big Nebraska football fan. He's from Nebraska. He's extremely happy about Matt Rule coming to town. Not so much a great pro coach, much better college coach. So good luck to him in Nebraska. But ever since Steve Wilkes
Oh
took
man.
over this team, all they're doing is grounding and pounding, grounding and pounding. And listen to these stats from the Carolina Panthers running game: 43 rushes, 320 yards. Deontay Foreman ran for 165 yards and a touchdown. Chuba Hubbard ran for 125 himself. And they grounded and pounded the Lions' playoff chances while keeping their own playoff hopes alive. Dustin, another one of my predictions might come true.
I know. This is nuts.
This is
This is
scary.
nuts. And you know what? I did in a roundabout way. I predicted that they would make the playoffs as well. I think I had them as
You
a
have
wild
a
card.
wild card, yes.
But where I was wildly wrong is that I thought Baker Mayfield would be leading this offense.
Nope, it's gonna be Sam. It's Sam Darnold leading this offense. My
Hey,
goodness.
Arnold.
Hey, Darnold.
But yeah, I have to tip my cap and say that that was also my most notable performance, because I was watching the stats tick up because I was checking my fantasy matchup as you do. And I said, Donta Foreman is single-handedly keeping me in this. The Carolina run game was unbelievable. Now, has to be said with the caveat that the Lions have not been able to defend the run all year. Now, they've shored up their defense on the pass, but
With a caveat, they held the Jets to 50 yards in their game, which was inexplicable.
yeah,
But
that
then next
is
week they allow
shocking.
300. The next week they allow almost 320 yards.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so with one notable exception, the Lions have not been able to run or defend the run pretty much all year. But with that being said, that doesn't diminish what Donta Foreman and Chuba Hubbard did for a Carolina ground game any less, in my opinion. You know, what's the saying? You do what you're supposed to do against. A lot of times people say you do what you're supposed to do against teams that are inferior to you.
You beat
You're
the teams you're supposed to beat.
Yep. And I would say this is a case of that. It doesn't matter that the Lions' run defense, for the most part, is lackluster. It just Donta Foreman and Chuba Hubbard took advantage of their opportunity, and pardon the pun, they ran with it.
Now, this is the schedule. Now, the Panthers actually just reunited with Josh Norman. He came back to the team.
Yeah, I saw that
one of
because
their
Horn is out.
JC Hunt is out.
Mhm.
He had surgery for the had to have a surgery on his broken wrist. But Josh Norman, I think he was recently with the.
Was it Commanders? I want to say. I'm trying to remember.
I know he's with the Bills last or 2 years ago,
Oh, okay.
but no, it's
Either way, I think he's a long way from the time where he was
the
he and
49ers. He was at the 49ers.
oh wow, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
as a probably a bit player. So, but I mean that Niners defense is outstanding with even without a guy like him. But this is their next two games. They're at Tampa on Sunday at 1 o'clock, and then they're at the Saints. So they had wrapped up their home season. But next week they're against they take on Tampa Bay,
Hmm.
who I believe they beat them up in earlier this year. They
Yeah.
actually they beat them up. They beat them 21-3. So it's going to depend on which Buccaneers team shows up. Is it going to be the one that had to come back and beat the Cardinals of all teams, the Cardinals,
Yeah.
with
On a
Cliff
last
Kingsbury,
second
who
field goal.
with Cliff Kingsbury, who clearly it looks like doesn't want to be there anymore, or but I think Carolina could now, even if both the if the Panthers beat the Buccaneers next week and they lose to the Saints and they went up with the same record, the Panthers win the division because their head-to-head record is 2-0
Mhm.
against the Buccaneers. So all they have to do is win this game, and basically they wrap up the division. It doesn't matter. Won't matter what happens in the Saints game. Although the Saints are still also have a very outside chance of winning the division too,
I know.
which is weird.
It's wild. It
The
is
Saints need
wild.
to. Well, the thing is, the Saints are at Philadelphia on Sunday, so
Yeah,
I think
that's
their
gonna be
chances are very slim. The chances of
yeah.
winning that game are very, very slim.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's what Saints fans are hoping for. They're hoping for, a playoff berth, and then you can see another Andy Dalton first round playoff exit. I'm sorry, Bengals fans. I'm sorry, but that was his MO all the time when he was
Now,
in Cincinnati.
I had to look up the record for the most rushing yards in a game by an NFL team, and that 320-yard performance wasn't even close.
Wow. Okay.
The record for the most rushing yards in a game for a team, the New York Giants, back on November 11th, 1950,
Oh,
and they beat the Baltimore Colts 55-20 in
wow.
that game. And looking at the player stat, so the Giants attempted only I'm sorry, they attempted only 11 passes in that game.
Oh, man. Hey, yeah, that's what it was. Run it back then. That's
They attempted 11 passes in that game. Eddie Price ran for 145 yards. Travis Tidwell had 75 yards. I'm sorry. Eddie Price had 145 yards on 14 attempts with 2 touchdowns. Travis Tidwell, 3 attempts, 75 yards and a touchdown. Gene Roberts, 71 yards. Bob Jackson, 62 yards. Jim Austin Darp, 54 yards. Joe Scott, 8 yards. Randy Clay, 7 yards. 423 yards, 6 rushing touchdowns. New York.
oh,
And this was their statistics passing between two quarterbacks. 6 for 11, 55 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions.
oh man. Man, I love the NFL, but I don't know if I could have watched football in the 50s. Now I see, now I see why Paul Brown was so revolutionary because he really opened up the game, but it appears that there are some coaches that just wanted to run it down your throat still.
Yeah.
It's like
I,
Paul Brown was the one who kind of popularized the forward pass, was he not? I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I've seen that football life.
it may have been Hallis.
Oh yeah, okay. Let
George Hallis, who Notre Dame was credited for inventing the forward pass with Newt Rockne, but I believe professionally it might have been George Hallis
first
who
pass in a professional
but
game.
but
Let's
Paul
see.
Brown could have also. I mean, they played when they Cleveland Browns played in the AAFC, the All American Football Conference. He would probably he had Otto Graham as his quarterback,
Hmm.
and he
Hmm.
broke all sorts of records back then before Johnny Unitas came along.
Yeah. So I don't. Let's see. I'm looking it up here. Whoa, this is a long Wikipedia article. But you are right. You are right. Newt Rockne. He was the first one. Let's see.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
if I remember correctly, the forward pass was illegal for a very long time in football
it was. It was. And let's
because
see.
they stylized it after rugby.
Okay, I was way off. The first one was first forward pass in a professional game may have been thrown in an Ohio League game played on October 25th, 1906. Now that's not definite, but oh man. The forward pass was legalized on February 25th, 1933. So that's when it was finally legal to throw a forward pass.
Ah,
But
okay.
yeah,
So
apparently I was way off on my, Paul Brown assumption there.
yeah, you wouldn't be wrong. I mean, that was probably the Cleveland Browns were probably the team that used the most when they were
Yeah, when
in
they
the
were
All American Football Conference. Then they moved to the NFL and won a bunch of titles on the get go. So we're gonna move on to our hottest individual takes of the week. And Dustin, I have a feeling we're on the same wavelength here,
yeah.
on their hottest individual take of the week. So I'll have you start off first as the for this hottest individual take.
Well, and you could probably guess if you've listened to our show, you know that we had a lengthy discussion about this very same issue with one
Yep.
Brian Cady when he joined
Yes,
us
sir.
on the show.
That's correct.
Now, but the thing that I'm going to say, and I'm going to kind of I'll make a quick point so that you can get in there with your point because I know we have the same general overarching feeling, but it's getting to the point where you're really fearing for Tua's safety at this point. We found out today that he is in the concussion protocol yet again. And my first instinct is I know the NFL tried to tighten up the concussion evaluation protocol, but I think more work needs to be done. How are we finding out just now that he's in the concussion protocol?
Right.
And ironically, yet again, it's the Dolphins, and the Dolphins had that independent medical consultant who cleared him when he had no business being cleared, and it was clear to everybody's mind, but in everybody's eye who saw that game. Tua looked punch drunk in that Cincinnati game,
Yeah.
and they cleared him. But this is more work needs to be done because now you're messing with the career and livelihood of a very young quarterback who has already overcome injuries in his
Hmm.
career. And and I am no medical professional, but I have heard that the cumulative effects of concussions can add up as you get after you get one. Supposedly, I think, if memory serves, you become slightly more susceptible to them in the future. And then if you just keep getting concussions, it's not good. Whether you
No.
whether you really believe in a lot of the research that has been done about CTE or not, which I don't know how at this point you could argue it's not a thing.
It's still a very. I mean, I have my beliefs that CTE it could be a thing. I'm starting to believe it can,
Yeah.
but the research is so, I wouldn't say young. It's we don't have too much material. We don't have too much
Yeah.
research. We can't go back 50 years to
No.
look at it. We've only really started looking at it over the last decade or two.
Yes, and I would agree that it is, it's relatively new. It's new ground. We'll say that.
Mhm.
But the cumulative effects of concussions do seem to be a thing. I mean, look at Matthew Stafford. He is in the he was in the concussion protocol, I believe, for the second time this year, and his season's over.
Yeah.
So, and now Stafford is a little older, but clearly more work needs to be done on evaluating concussions in game and maybe taking a look at players. And it's just unfortunate and concerning that it's the same player
Yeah.
yet again.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, this is all about Tua. I think if he wants to maybe save his career, and I don't say this just because I'm a Jets fan. This is purely as a pure observational, just from a pure observational standpoint as a football fan and a concerned human being. To save his career, I think Tua needs to shut it down for the rest of the season. You got 2 games left, and yes, your team is in a huge spot. You could go to the playoffs after not being there since 2016. You still have the rest of your career to think about. And
Yes.
yeah, the thing about concussions, I remember Sidney Crosby had concussion issues, had some really bad issues for a while until until a couple of years ago when he started playing again. But they found his symptoms were coming more from his spinal cord than they were his actual head.
Okay.
So I wonder, I gotta wonder if it's the same thing, where it's not just the head being rattled around, but it's also your spinal cord being affected, especially up
Yeah.
here in the neck. So
Maybe it's
I,
misaligned somewhere or something.
possibly. So if I'm Mike McDaniel, if I'm Chris Greer, if I'm Chris Greer, the GM, I'm sitting them down. I'm saying, listen, you we had you go through concussion protocol once already. We saw what happened in the game in Cincinnati, where your fingers were mangled. Not so much mangled from getting hit, but just being mangled from just distorted from the hit you took because your head hit the ground. That's a scary situation, and then this happened again. I don't know. And Dustin, you alluded to it earlier in the show. You have to wonder if that had to do with the 3 interceptions he threw in the last 3 possessions of the game for the Dolphins.
Yeah.
But if I'm those 2 guys, I'm sitting them down right now, and I'm saying to Tua, I would say, Tua, we love you. We know how much you want to win. We know how much you're a competitor. But you're taking your life into your hands whenever you go on the football field, and we think it would be best for you, for your long term, for your career, also your life ahead of you after your career. It's best that you set up these next 2 games for this season. Let Teddy take over. Let Teddy Bridgewater Teddy Two Gloves take over.
Yeah.
He's more than competent. He's more than competent to take over this offense for you in your stead. We got 2 big games coming up. I know you want to play, but your life is so much more important. Your career is so much more important, and your life after your postseason career, your post playing career, is so much more important than than jeopardizing your health just because you want to go out there and play.
Yeah.
And it's. I mean, like I said, I'm not saying this as a New York Jets fan because they're in the playoff hunt too, but I say this as a hardcore observer of football. Your health is so much more important than what could be the next 2 games. Because who
Mhm.
knows what happens with you next time you get hit? You
Yeah.
could be in the situation again like you were in Cincinnati.
Yeah. And that's the thing because and I think I'm not 100% sure if I'm right about this, but I think a large reason that Troy Aikman was retired was due to the fact that at the end of his career he was sustaining a lot of concussions.
Same with Steve Young.
Yep.
Those were in
Yep.
the days of AstroTurf.
Yeah. Yeah, that basically was like concrete when
Yeah,
you're playing on it. So,
it literally was. It was concrete, and then maybe a little bit of cushioning, and then AstroTurf, and
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
Ugh,
Yeah,
ugh.
so I mean, that's just I think and I hope everybody who's watching, listening realizes Ryan and I this is an issue that's bigger than football. I think we're both genuinely concerned for Tua's well-being at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely think so. I have a bonus hottest individual take this week. So after last night's absolute debacle in Los Angeles for the Denver
Oh,
Broncos, Nathaniel Hackett has mercifully been fired from from the head coaching duties. He's been relieved of his coaching duties with the Denver Broncos. Uh, I'm pretty sure Broncos fans, if they're watching or listening, are rejoicing over the fact that they no longer have to see this man run this team. And
Wow.
especially, I don't think yesterday's loss had to do with it more so much of the teammates getting in fights with each other
Yeah,
on the sideline during the game.
Randy Gregory threw a punch at Nathaniel Hackett is what I'm hearing or
I was
something.
referring to Brett Rippon and one of the offensive linemen getting into a scuffle. But if I that's news to me. If
Yeah.
Randy Gregory's throwing punches at Nathaniel Hackett.
Apparently he swung on him. I didn't see it. I didn't see it. It was just something I read, but I don't know. I can't verify, but man, things were clearly the wheels were long off the track for the Hackett regime there.
Yeah, it was a really bad. I mean, they got off to they got off to the win this season, and then just kind of the wheels fell off right from there. So, man, if you're the Broncos, I mean, who are you bringing in next year as your coach? Are you bringing in Sean Payton? Are you bringing in Dan Quinn? Are you bringing in um, somebody from Phillies or even D'Amico Ryans, who's is a big name who's being floated out there as a next head coach, as the next head coach of a football team? Who are you bringing in?
Yeah, I mean, if memory serves, I think Dan Quinn was one of the finalists for the job last year before
Hmm.
they went for Hackett. And apparently, Sean Payton is so interested in getting back into coaching that the rumors are that he's already started assembling a quote unquote all star staff, one of which would be, I think, Vic Fangio would be his defensive coordinator. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, Peyton's going to be able to pick where he wants to go. He's going to look at all the openings and he's going to decide which is best. And you have to wonder if the Broncos would be considered best right now. I mean, I'll be interested these last 2 weeks to see if Russell Wilson all of a sudden plays a little bit better without Nathaniel Hackett in there. I don't know. Sometimes coaching changes spark teams a little bit, but yeah, this was a failed experiment, and you have to wonder, like you said, who are they going to bring in? Is the taste left in people's mouths so sour now that they're not going to want to go there. But I
Yeah.
don't think that's the case. Ultimately, I do think the Broncos have some talent. Prior to the Rams game, I thought starting their defense in fantasy was a good idea because
Oh no!
the Broncos the Broncos defense
Oh
has been going very
no!
well. I thought I could stream them. I thought I could stream them. That was a problem.
Oh, poor
But
Dustin.
but the but the Broncos do have some defensive talent.
They do.
Russell is there. They do have some receivers that are believed to be talented. Jerry Judy really hasn't shown much yet, but a lot of people believe in his talent. And they did have some injuries at the beginning of the year that didn't help them, but it'll be interesting. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting for sure.
So Brett Rippon got into a scuffle with Dalton Risner on the sideline in the third
Jeez.
quarter, and that was after Russell Wilson got sacked in back-to-back plays. I have to correct myself too. The Broncos lost their opening game
Yes, to my
your Seahawks. I
Seahawks.
apologize. So I
They did.
misspoke. But we'll always have this quote from Nathaniel Hackett. Looking back at it, definitely should have gone for it.
Oh yeah, yeah, because they kicked what, like a 64-yard field goal
Yeah, they kicked
attempt.
a 64-yard field goal instead of trying to go for it on 4th and 5 in the closing minute of the game. Yeah, so the worst clock management in the history of football. And looking at a little bit in the article, so at the end it says that Randy Gregory and Rams guard Ode Abushi exchanged words, and Gregory punched Ibushi in the helmet. So he didn't swing
Okay.
at Nathaniel Hackett. He swung at another team's
Okay, all right.
player.
So I misread something, but oh boy, that's not good. And the other thing is we should have you and I have talked. We don't want anybody it's never we never rejoice in anyone losing their job,
No,
but
we
we
don't.
should have seen
We shouldn't,
well, we
because it could
should
be
have
us.
seen I know, but we should have seen this coming when they
Yeah.
had to bring in a clock management like assistant, somebody who was formerly of the Baltimore Ravens staff, the current interim coach. He was brought in specifically to help Nathaniel Hackett with his time and clock management at the decision making.
Oh, oh.
So, man.
Well, I will say this though. I think Nathaniel Hackett. Here's my hottest take of the week for
Okay.
sure.
All right.
Hackett has supplanted Adam Gase as the worst coach in NFL history, which proves the point, which goes to show you can coach all the legendary quarterbacks in this league,
Mhm.
and yet you are a terrible head coach.
Yeah.
Terrible head coach.
Yeah, not everybody is Mike Holmgren. I'm just gonna
Nope.
say it. He was known for coaching those legendary quarterbacks, and he
Yeah,
went
those
on.
tree, and also the coaching tree he had too.
Yes, and I mean, he did go on to coaching success for sure, but he wasn't.
Uh,
Later in
but
his
at least with the Packers,
yes,
those
with the
Browns years
Packers,
were
the Browns
ugh,
years, yeah, that was well. It
ugly.
is because of my. I always said this when Mike Holmgren was coach of my beloved Seahawks. If he was coach and GM, he didn't do a great job at either. But the year that the Seahawks won 13-3 and went to the Super Bowl is because Tim Ruskell was GM. Mike Holmgren could finally just coach, and he did a great job there. But then he goes to the Browns to be their football czar. Remember that term? And that was just a
Yep,
dumpster fire.
that was a dumpster. That was a train wreck full of dumpster fires.
Yeah.
Oi, oi.
so, so yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to conclude this show in just a moment. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break and actually just to have a quick word from one of our friends at Godzilla Media, and that is Mohawk Honda. It's cold out there. If you haven't noticed in the Mighty 518, it's cold out there. It's snowy. You need a vehicle that can get you to and from safe and sound. And while the seasons may change, one constant is a buying experience at Mohawk Honda where you are greeted with a smile and you are treated with respect. And the new inventory is ramping up too. The vehicles like the Pilots, the Passports, and Ridgelines, they're all four-wheel drive. Great way to get yourself through that snow. And remember, this is the best time to sell your vehicle. They buy cars, and in some cases, you may be able to sell it for more than what you paid for it. That's another advantage you get from the number one volume dealer in the capital region. General Manager Greg Johnson and his team of sales consultants are always available to help you in the buying experience. And they have big news as Scott Moynihan is back at Mohawk Honda. He brings his 30 plus years of automotive experience with him. Stop in, welcome Scott home. You can also see my guy, Evans Whalen. He's the guy who got me into my 2016 Honda HRV. Yes, the season's changed, but at Mohawk Honda on Freeman's Bridge Road in Scotia or at mohawkhonda.com, they always go out of their way to please you. All right. And again, thank you to Mohawk Honda for being a partner with Godzilla Media. Now, let's talk briefly about the updated, for now, NFL playoff picture, because tonight, in about, I'd say about 10 minutes,
minutes. Yeah.
the Chargers will kick off against the Indianapolis Colts. And I believe if the Chargers win, they can wrap up a playoff berth. So if we look at the NFL standings current, we have in the AFC, Buffalo and Kansas City tied at 12-3, but the Bills have the tiebreaker advantage over the Chiefs based on head-to-head. Cincinnati is a 3 seed at 11-4. Jacksonville is currently the number 4 seed at 7-8. Baltimore has clinched a playoff spot as well at 10-5. The Chargers are at 8-6. Miami's at the 7 seed at 8-7. Then in the hunt, still in the hunt, the Patriots, the Jets, the Titans, the Steelers, and the Raiders. Still in the hunt at 7-8. Dustin, looking at these 4 teams, looking at where do you see things over the next 2 weeks? Where do you see things going? Who's the number 1 seed, and who gets in the wild card, and who's going to wrap up that 4 spot with the NFC, with the AFC South?
I think that the Chargers are going to. I think the Chargers will win tonight, obviously, and I think they will get into the playoffs. But we will see. We will see how they do. It's been a while for the Chargers to be in the playoffs, and I've said that there's something in their DNA that they just can't seem to get over the hump. But the AFC South specifically, we've been drinking a lot of the Kool-Aid here, but I think the Jaguars are going to do it. I think your prediction will come true. And that's scary to me. You wield this power, but right now, the Titans, now that Malik Willis is starting, I just don't think they can. I just don't think they can do it. And like I said earlier in the show, everyone knows that their offense is just Derrick Henry. So in that AFC South, you said it was the 4, I believe.
AFC South would be the 4 seed.
That I think that's going to be the Jaguars. I really do. I really do.
So the one thing I don't trust about the Chargers is that Brandon Staley is their head coach.
Yeah, you've mentioned
I have labeled him the Aaron Boone of the NFL. And there's a reason why. Is because he relies too much on analytics and not enough on coaching touch. Like game situations. So barring a miracle by the Colts, if the Colts don't beat, if the Chargers win, then they have the Rams. Technically at home, it's SoFi field. They share the same field. It's basically a home game for the Rams because who roots for the Chargers?
Yeah,
and they end the season at Denver. So if they win tonight, good for them. They clinch the playoffs. They clinch a playoff berth. Now that comes down to the last playoff seed, the last wild card seed. Miami currently owns it. They have 2 big games coming up in their division. They're at New England, who's right behind them for that 7th seed, and they play the Jets on the final game of the season also at 7-8. But the Patriots play the Bills on the final game of the season. They're at Buffalo.
I did
for the final game of the season. So now here's the biggest curveball. Mike White was cleared today.
Oh,
and he's starting on Sunday.
Him, huh?
Yeah, it was Dr. Mentis Toboggan that cleared him. But that's the biggest factor right now. If the Jets win out, they could sneak in as a 7 seed. If New England beats Miami, then lose at Buffalo, and then the Jets beat Seattle, and they beat Miami, they could take that 7 seed and play either Kansas City or Buffalo in the first round of the playoffs. But that would my mind, for the last wild card spot, I think it might be Miami who takes it. Just based on.
Oh, you think the Dolphins are going to do it?
I think the Dolphins could. I mean, I'm rooting for my Jets hardcore because Mike White gives them the best chance to win.
Yeah,
but I don't think they'll win it. I don't think they'll win in the no credentials required derby in Seattle.
I see what you're doing. You're doing a reverse curse on me right now. You're making me think, it's going to be easy.
Maybe. And for that 4 seed, I think the Jaguars they win out and they take the division crown. And I think Mike Vrabel's in a little bit of hot water going into the offseason. I think the GM getting fired in Tennessee doesn't bode well for the head coach afterwards.
Yeah.
Unless Vrabel's going to take over as GM, which I don't see that happening.
No, and we just went over that sometimes coach slash GM doesn't work well. Um,
No.
but I will say, and I have it up in front of me now. I think that you're correct. I hate to say it for you. I'm rooting. I'm hoping the Jets find a way, but I think Miami just has too much talent not to get that last wild card spot. I mean, man, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek
Tyreek
Hill,
Hill.
they're so fast. So
Yeah.
fast. Did you see that touchdown that Waddle had? And then
Yep.
Tyreek Hill was just running with him the
He's
whole
running
thing.
with them.
Those two, man, they should be Olympic sprinters, maybe. We'd have a good shot in the
I'm
Olympic
surprised they're
Games.
not. I'm
Yeah.
surprised they're not.
It's unbelievable. So I do think now we'll have to see what happens with Tua. If
Yeah.
what you want, the conversation that you wanted to have with him, if you were Dolphins brass, comes true, then we will see Teddy Bridgewater these final couple of games. But in New England, I always want to say, you always want to, just because of their past success, you're like, oh, Belichick's going to find a way to sneak in there. Not with this offense. Not not
No.
with not with the three-headed offensive coordinator. They're not going anywhere.
No. I agree with you there. I mean, their defense will keep them in games like they did against Cincinnati, but this offense is ugh,
Yeah.
gross.
Yeah, and I
Gross.
think I think the number one seed in the AFC could come down to. I could shock people here, but I think it's going to come down to Buffalo or Cincinnati. I don't think the Chiefs are going to be looking for that number one seed.
Interesting you say that because next Monday night the Bills are at Cincinnati.
Oh man, that'll be a game.
Spicy.
Yeah, that'll be a game for
That
sure.
will be a game, and since the Buffalo schedule is at Cincinnati, then at home against New England in the final night of the season. Cincinnati is again they host Buffalo and they host the Ravens, which could decide the NFC AFC North crown, and then Kansas City they play they host the Broncos and they're at the Raiders in the final week of the season. So it could be it's definitely coming down to three teams for home field, and it's going to be very interesting. Actually, you could technically say four teams. No, three teams for home field. Never mind. Never mind. I was going to say the Ravens, but they're 10-5. I don't think they could win the home field. Like, the most they could,
Okay.
the best they could get is the third seed, and that's it. They can host a playoff game, but they'll probably host. But they'll probably host the Chargers. So
The
if I'm
Los Angeles Superchargers, which just doesn't sound as
Superchargers.
good as the
It
San
doesn't.
Diego
It doesn't.
Superchargers.
It doesn't. So in the NFC, let's look at the NFC playoff picture. Right now, the Eagles hold the 1 seed, followed by Minnesota, who are a game behind them,
Yeah.
followed by the 49ers, who are a game behind them. The 4 seed is whoever wants to win the NFC South.
Yeah.
Right now, it's Tampa Bay. They have a 1-game lead over Carolina. 5th seed is Dallas. 6th seed is Giants. 7th seed is the Commanders. Right behind them, right in the tail, in the hunt, are
Yeah.
Dustin's Seattle Seahawks, the Detroit Lions, the Green Bay Packers, the Carolina Panthers, who are also in the running for the NFC South crown, and the New Orleans Saints, who are also still in the hunt for the NFC South crown.
That is still boggles my mind.
It does.
Boggles my mind.
It does. Now, Philadelphia, they host New England, they host New Orleans, and they host the Giants on the last game of the season. That could also be one of those flex games for the
Sunday Night Football.
Sunday Night Football.
Mhm.
Let's see, the Vikings play. They're at the Packers and at the Bears. Packers are coming on strong the last couple weeks of the season, and then the Bears they're the Bears. For San Francisco, they are at the Raiders, and then they finish at home against the Cardinals. Those are two very
those are
winnable
both
games.
wins.
Those are both winnable games. for the. I think we already talked about the NFC South. The basically Sunday's game between Tampa and Carolina could basically decide the division. I don't see New Orleans beating Philadelphia.
No, I
And
would
if
be
and if
shocked.
Philadelphia wins on Sunday, they've clinched home field.
Yeah.
The Giants, they're at home against the Colts. That's a winnable game. It should be a winnable game. And I think if they win next week, they clinch a playoff spot. And they at the Eagles to finish out the season. And in Washington, it is at home against the Browns and at home against the Cowboys. So it depends on for the Cowboys. It's all going to depend on if they rest their starters because they've already clinched their playoff spot.
Yeah.
Seattle is this Sunday is definitely a must-win game because they host my New York Jets and then they host the Rams for the home closer. So they'd have to win out and hope that the Commanders or the Giants, although I would say that more so the Commanders, have to lose one of their games. Detroit is at home against the Bears, and they're at the Packers for the last game of the season. The Packers, we kind of already mentioned, they play Minnesota, and they play the Lions. And Carolina, whoever wins that game on Sunday between Carolina and Tampa Bay, that's going to decide the NFC South. That'll be the 4 seed.
Yeah.
So, but they'll want to play. There are words to play the Cowboys in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, that could be tough. That could be
So,
tough. Although I feel like the Eagles are going to be number one seed in the
yeah,
NFC. I don't think anything is stopping them. However, I do think that the 49ers will jump the Vikings to be the 2 seed. The Vikings just they don't I've said it. I have no hate on the Vikings, but they just keep coming down to the wire, and there's some crazy stats that I just don't understand with their negative point differential and everything. The record that they have, man, the Vikings, they just I don't think they are what their record says they
you
are.
know what they remind me of? They remind me of an NHL team that plays every single game like it's Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. They're fighting the Vikings are fighting for their playoff lives for pretty much every win they've had this year.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give it to them because they find a way to win those games, but it
Yeah, you
just
can't fault them. You can't fault
yeah.
them for winning all those games. But at the same time, you're like, what kind of team is this?
Yes. Yes, that's my problem, and I just think that the 49ers are absolutely stacked everywhere. And last I knew, I think Debo Samuel, there's a chance he would be back for the playoffs, so that would be good for them. But yeah, I'm really this is more of just a hope. This is first off, I hate to admit it, but I think the Buccaneers are going to find a way maybe to win that NFC South just because sometimes when the game's on the line, you got to wonder if old Tom Brady can do it, but the way the Carolina defense has been playing, that's going to be a tough game for them.
Well, not only their defense, but their offense, especially run. Not they've
Yes,
discovered
that
a
run
run game.
game.
Steve Wilkes has said, "Yeah, all right, let's just run the ball."
Yeah, let's just do this thing. But I'm hoping that the Detroit Lions find a way just because I feel like they deserve it after the start that they had and then to
Mhm.
come just to turn it around. I respect this team. I really do.
Yeah, me too. Me too. We talked about it on. I talked about it on Motor City Realists with Mike and Zach. We talked about the Lions and the Jets. They're on kind of similar planes, you could say,
Mhm.
parallels. So I if the Lions and the Jets don't make the playoffs this year, I think they'll definitely make it next year. I think for the Lions, I think it's going to come down to whether or not Jared Goff stays, and I think they probably need one more. I think they're at least on offense. They're okay. I
Yeah.
think they're all set.
Yeah, they have
They've rebuilt.
talent
They've
there.
rebuilt their offensive line. They have a pretty competent quarterback in the backfield. I think they're missing a piece on defense. I'm not sure where it is. Whether it be, I don't know if it's in the secondary or if it's that linebacker. They're missing. They're missing a piece somewhere. It's going to be who's to be a big playmaker. For the Jets, it's quarterback. It's going
Yeah.
to come down to who plays quarterback, and they've gone through 4 quarterbacks this year, and just need some stability back there. So in my mind, I think I think Carolina's still going to pull it out in the NFC South. Giants will clinch next week against a really horrible Colts team, and it's going to depend on which team we see for the Commanders.
Yeah, that's
In the next 2 weeks, because are we going to see the one? Are we going to see the team that's lost 2 in a row? Who came down to the last possession, and even the NFL came out and said, "Yeah, we made a mistake on that Giants game. We should have called DPI
mhm.
instead of illegal illegal shift." It's also going to depend on, you know, who shows up for that team against the Browns. I think the team prior to the last 3 weeks they've played, that team will show up. And I think the Commanders are going to win out. We're going to see all 4 NFC East teams in the playoffs.
Man, that would be wow. That would be something.
And also, I'd like to revisit my take from a couple weeks ago when I said that we could have a Subway Series. We could have 2 New York teams, New York based teams in the Super Bowl. I take that back. I take it back.
Yeah, well, you know what? You can't sometimes the season changes, just like that, and you can't I'm not going to fault you for putting your thoughts out there and going with your feelings because that's
Yeah,
what we're supposed to do on this thing.
that's what we do. We're just people. We're just guys who love talking football, and
Sometimes we get a little carried away.
sometimes we get a skosh carried away.
I mean, after the first few weeks of the season, Geno was playing like an MVP. You never would have thought that the Seahawks would go 0-4 against the NFC South. Yes, I'm still bitter about it.
Just it was that Germany trip, man. I think that Germany trip
I know.
totally sank them. So we're gonna get out of here, folks. It is just about kickoff in Indianapolis, but we want to remind you before we get out of here to visit our socials right down here below on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at NoCredsREQ, Facebook.com/NoCredsREQ, YouTube.com/ at NoCredsREQ. Subscribe. We're at 163 subscribers. We're gonna fall short of our goal at 200 of getting 200 before the end of the year. That's okay. That's okay. Some goals we don't get, but we go for them. But that's okay. We'll reach 200 come hell or high water, and hopefully we can go on a trajectory from there. On the podcast side, you can always subscribe. Spreaker's our home base, but you can also listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, whatever podcast platform you are on. Also, rate and review. 5 stars is preferred. Number of stars you can give us, and if you leave a nice review, I might even read it on the air. So, for Dustin Henry, I'm Ryan McCarthy. We want to thank you for watching and or listening to No Credentials Required, where you don't need a press pass to talk sports. We're presented by Billy Up Sports in association with Godzilla Media, and we're gonna have another visit from Annabelle one more time before we wrap up the year. So thanks, folks, for listening or watching. We will talk to you again next week.
Good night, everybody.